She fell from the sky. The human who touched her changed everything forever. Asterisk the first time Yolan saw her. She fell from the sky like a shard of silver fire, naked, bleeding, and silent in a crater that hadn't existed 10 minutes earlier. He'd been checking the outer perimeter of the east field, fixing another busted irrigation sensor, when the ground shook hard enough to knock him off his feet. No warning. Just a roar, a flash, and then silence, except for the faint whine of static dancing across his headset. He stood slowly, brushing red dust from his hands, and looked toward the smoke curling up in the west sky. Something had come down fast. His rover picked up electromagnetic interference before he reached the crater. Readings spiked, then dropped to 0. Drones that tried to fly close fell from the sky, crashing like flies hitting an invisible wall. One burst into flame before it even made it to the edge. Yolan stopped the rover manually, climbed out, and walked the rest of the way. Whatever this was, it wasn't normal. He found her lying in the center of the crater, like a fallen statue. She wasn't human. Not exactly. Her skin shimmered with faint bioluminescence, blue and silver, shifting gently like a living light. Her long hair was white, tangled, streaked with blood and dust. She was unconscious, breathing shallooly barely. Alive? No clothes. No ID. No gear. Just her body, her wounds, and something strange flickering under her skin like lightning trapped in glass. He looked around. No ship, no debris, no sign of escape pods or tech. Just a hole in the earth and a mystery in the middle of it. The scanners. On his wrist flickered and died the second he aimed them at her. The data log fried. His comms crackled and shut down. Whatever she wasn't meant to be found. Or maybe someone didn't want her found. She stirred slightly as he knelt beside her. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes stayed shut, lashes long and shadowed. Her body looked fragile, almost too slender, but not weak. There was something tense in her muscles, even unconscious. It's like an animal waiting to spring. Jalen hesitated only a second. Then he took off his jacket and gently wrapped it around her. The heat coming off her skin was wrong to cool, but not cold. More. Leak, tuned to something else. Like she wasn't built for this world. He lifted her carefully. She weighed almost nothing. No implants, no armor, no resistance. Her head lolled against his chest. The strange pulse under her skin flickered again, once like a soft electric. Breath? By the time he made it back to the rover, the sun had dipped low over Viren 3's jagged horizon. The colony dome shimmered in the distance like a sleeping beast, unaware that something impossible had just landed outside its fences. He drove in silence, heart pounding. There was no protocol for this, no checkbox on any maintenance log labeled. Glowing naked woman from the sky. If command got wind of her, they'd take her. Dissect her. Study her until there was nothing left. And maybe that was the worst part. He'd seen it before during the war. New life, new tech, new biology, crushed beneath cold logic and locked doors. Anything not understood was boxed, tagged, and erased. He wasn't going to let that happen again. When he reached the back entrance of his prefab shelter, he parked the rover under the canopy and carried her inside, bypassing the main sensors. His quarters weren't much, just a cot, a sink, a heater, stacks of spare drone parts, but they were his. Safe. 1-1. He laid her gently on the cot, dimmed the overhead light. Her body was bruised, strange patterns along her ribs. Marks that looked too symmetrical to be random. Not wounds. Symbols, maybe. Scars. She twitched once in her sleep, lips parting. He thought he heard a sound then, something soft. Word, maybe. He leaned closer. What did you say? But she didn't speak again, just a slow, steady breath. Her skin glowed faintly, illuminating the edges of the blanket like moonlight on snow. Jalen. Sat down beside the heater, rubbing the dust from his hands. He didn't know who she was, where she came from, or why she'd fallen. But he knew one thing for sure. She wasn't supposed to survive the fall. And now that she had, someone would come looking, they always did. But for now, alive. And he wasn't going to let her die in the dark. It's not on his watch. Asterisk, she didn't wake that night. Jalen sat in the same spot for hours, arms crossed, watching the slow rhythm of her chest rising and falling. The soft hum of the shelter's air recycler was the only sound, and even that felt too loud. Her presence changed the room like something sacred had. It's been dropped into a place meant only for machines and dust. He'd wrapped her in 2 blankets. Not because she shivered, she didn't, but because it felt wrong to leave her uncovered, exposed like that. The bruises on her body looked recent, angry, sharp-edged, but not human. They followed strange arcs, almost patterned. Not like she'd fallen, more like she'd been marked. There was something almost terrifying about how quiet she was, not just unconscious still. Jalen had seen a lot of bodies in his life. Dead ones, broken ones, ones trying real hard not to be either. But this woman, this creature, this being, was none of those. She was alive, and waiting, he just didn't know for what. He ran a low-power scan from the old Medcatan analog model to outdated to fry like the wrist pad. The results were ... confusing. 2 hearts. No kidney analogs, 0 gut bacteria. Her internal temperature hovered 5 degrees below human average, but her cells were still metabolizing something. Fast, efficient, she was engineered. Had to be. No natural species evolved this cleanly, this symmetrically. She didn't have fingerprints, no scars, no calluses. Even the bruises looked ... precise. Yalan stood and stretched, knees cracking. The silence was getting to him. He walked over, hesitated, then reached out and gently pushed a strand of white hair from her face. The moment his fingers brushed her skin, her eyelids twitched. He froze, not all the way open, just a flutter. But her lips moved again. This time, the word was clearer. Barely a whisper. 1 syllable. Natari. He pulled back, heart hammering. Not from fear, but from the weight of it. The way she said it wasn't a question. Was giving him, it was more like a memory. Awa. Something slipping through pain. Or a code. He said it aloud carefully. Dari. Her body went still again. He didn't sleep much that night. Just watched her, waited by morning. Something had changed. The air felt ... warmer. He checked the thermostat. Same settings. The walls were moist. The air recycler whined, trying to compensate. He walked to the window and stared out at the sky beyond the dome. The crater was gone, not filled, not covered. Gone. His mouth went dry. He stepped back, opened the door, walked out into the early morning haze. Where the impact had been was now smooth red soil. No burn marks, no dust clouds, no magnetic residue. It was like the planet had decided it never happened. When he returned inside, she was sitting up, blankets wrapped around her, back pressed against the wall, eyes open and glowing faintly in the dim light. Not bright, just enough to catch the outline of her face. Her eyes were large, gray-blue deep, but hard to read. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, just watched him. Yalan raised both hands slowly, palms open. Hey, easy. You're safe here. Still nothing. He grabbed a bottle of water from the shelf, unscrewed it, and set it on the floor between them. Then he backed away, slowly, and sat down against the opposite wall. They stared at each other for a long time. Minutes passed. Then, with slow, deliberate fingers, she reached for the bottle, picked it up, sniffed it like she didn't trust it, took a sip, coughed once, then drank again. Jalen let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Okay, he said softly. That's a start. She looked at him again, then spoke. Yalan, he blinked. ... what? She repeated it. Yalan. He hadn't told her his name. He was sure of that. He stared at her, stunned. How do you know? My name? She tilted her head, voice slow, rough, like unused vocal cords. Memory. ... crosslink. Fragments. Voice. ... patterns. From me, she nodded once. He felt the hairs on his neck rise. She hadn't just heard him. She'd read him. Somehow, taken pieces of his voice, his thoughts maybe, and woven them together. She was learning fast. He rubbed his face. Okay, that's fine. Great, actually. She frowned slightly. You fixed me, he laughed once, short and dry. I just stopped you from bleeding out. I didn't fix anything. But she shook her head. Fixed me. Yolan sat there, in silence, looking at her, at the glowing skin, the eyes that saw more than she should, the quiet certainty in her voice, and something inside him shifted. He didn't know what she was. He didn't know who she was, but he had a sinking feeling that the moment he carried her out of that crater, he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Someone would come looking. Something would follow. But for now, she was awake, alive, in his shelter. And whatever happened next, he wasn't letting her go. Not yet. Gillen didn't leave the shelter for 3 days. Outside, the colony kept spinning. Drones buzzed, soil rotors hummed. The cum tower blinked its tired red eye, but inside Jalen's quarters, time stopped. Antari didn't speak much, but she didn't sleep either. Not really. She would sit, legs crossed on the cot, eyes half-lidded. Hands resting on her knees, glowing faintly in the dark like she was connected to some invisible current humming through the air. Every so often, her pupils would flash brighter when he moved too close, like she was measuring him, calculating. Something behind those glacier blue eyes. He wasn't sure if she trusted him. He wasn't sure what she was. Asterisk, asterisk. He only knew one thing. The more time passed, the less alien she felt, and the more dangerous it became to let anyone know she was here. On the second night, he offered her a protein ration dehydrated stew, rehydrated under a heat lamp. Stared at the steaming bowl for a long moment, then reached out and dipped 2 fingers into it. Closed her eyes and pulled her hand back. I can't break it down, she murmured. He blinked. What, the food? She nodded. Carbon form. Dense, unfiltered. Sharp. He didn't understand half of that, but he nodded anyway. All right, I'll figure something else out. And he did. Spent the next few hours rigging an old nutrient synthesizer with samples from the hydroponics labs, pyromoss, protein gel, algae broth. Mixed it all together and heated it just enough to smell like something halfway edible. When he brought it to her, she didn't touch it right away. You keep trying, she said quietly. Yolan shrugged. It's what I do. Fix things. Looked at him, then really looked. Not scanning. Not studying. It made his chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in years. You don't fix people, she said. No, he admitted. But I try not to leave them broken either. She took the bowl, sipped once, and closed her eyes again. This time, she didn't pull away. On the 3rd day, she stood for the first time. He was adjusting the thermal vents when he heard movement. Behind him, he turned and froze. She was on her feet, one hand on the wall for balance. Her bare legs trembling slightly but holding. He moved toward her on instinct. She raised a hand. Don't. Stopped. I'm not weak, she said. Just not tuned for this gravity. Not yet. You're adapting? She nodded. Slowly, Yolan leaned against the wall. So what are you exactly? A scout? A weapon? A diplomat? Her lips quirked. Not a smile, more like she remembered what one might look like. I was meant to be a listener. A listener. Receiver, recorder, translator, meant to absorb. Interpret bridge. Between who? She didn't answer. He waited. Then she said, we were grown to be neutral, but not sterile. Emotional absorption was expected. Emotional output is not. You weren't supposed to feel things, he said slowly. No, she said. We were supposed to observe them in others. So what happened? She looked down at her own hands. I started dreaming. A long silence followed. Then she added almost a whisper. That was the first malfunction. Yolan didn't know what to say. He'd never seen anyone look more human than she did right then, not even Earthborn. That night, as the wind howled outside the dome, she asked him, "What is grief?" He blinked. "That's a heavy question. I feel it. But I don't understand the source." He swallowed. "Griefs. What happens when something leaves you and doesn't come back? A person. A feeling. A future you thought was real." She nodded slowly. "I think I'm full of it." Yolan sat down beside her, close, but not touching. The heat from her skin was faint, now less like fire, more like static, tamed, settled. She turned toward him. "You carry it too." He looked away. "Yeah. Who did you lose?" He hesitated. "A sister in the war, a team I should have protected. Sometimes, myself." Natari tilted her head. "You say that like it's past tense. But I don't think you're done losing parts of yourself." He almost laughed at that, bitter and low. "Maybe not," he said, "but I'm not done holding on either." They sat in silence for a long while after that. When she finally spoke again, her voice was softer. "There's something wrong in the soil." Yolan looked up. "What?" She stood, walked to the window, stared out at the flare fields beyond the dome. "The ground is off balance. Too much artificial nutrient. The planet is pushing back." He joined her. "You can feel that." "I don't know how, but I can." She looked at him. "This world is alive and angry." Yolan rubbed his jaw. "We're terraforming it. The soil's always unstable." She shook her head. "You're not building life. You're covering bones." Her glow flared slightly, a pulse under her skin. He felt it in his own chest, like pressure, like something inside her was tuning itself toward him. "What are you becoming?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I think I'm becoming more." Yolan stepped a little closer. For the first time, she didn't move away. And for the first time, he realized the real question wasn't where she came from more. What made her? It was what she was turning into now, and what part of him was already changing with her. Asterisk, the nights were different now. Yolan noticed it first in the silence. It wasn't the usual kind, the dry hum of recycled air and the occasional metal groan of the dome at rest. No, this was something else. A watchful stillness, like the world outside the dome had paused to listen in. Natari barely slept, but when she did, it wasn't normal. Her body entered a kind of stasis, still glowing faintly, her breathing so slow it made Yolan nervous every time. When she woke, she always asked questions about pain, about joy, about why humans smiled. When they were hurting one night, as he was checking the external pressure seals by lantern light, she said from across the room, "Do all humans crave touch?" He nearly dropped the scanner. He turned slowly. "Depends. On what? On trust. On need. On wanting to feel less." Alone, Natari nodded like she'd heard that answer before. My body wasn't made for physical bonds. But touch was. Meant only for correction, calibration, not comfort. He leaned against the wall, trying to read her face in the glow of the heater. "But you like it now?" he asked carefully. "I don't dislike it anymore," she said. "Especially yours." That stopped him cold. Not because it was seductive, but because it was honest. "I don't know what to do with that," he admitted. "Neither do I." She crossed the room to him, barefoot and quiet. She wore the thermal shirt he'd given her, sleeves rolled, her hair falling in silver waves past her shoulders now. She stopped just in front of him, not touching, but close enough that he could feel the faint electric warmth radiating off her skin. "I want to understand connection," she said, "without obligation, without programming." Dun 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 da 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 out. I'm like I'm all You want it? He asked. She nodded once. Yes. Yalin reached up slowly and brushed his fingers along her cheekbone. She didn't flinch, didn't glow brighter. Her eyes fluttered shut for a moment. When they opened again, there was something new in them. Not fear, not calculation, something softer. Then we go slow, he whispered. I'd like that, she said. She rested her forehead against his. No kiss, no pull. And that was enough. Until the beacon lit up red. It happened 3 hours later. Yalin was working diagnostics at his console when the colony's long-range scan grid flickered. A pulse. Short. Coded. Military dash grade. He sat up straight. The message was scrambled. Buried under layers of static, but he knew the format. This wasn't a weather satellite. This was tracking. Someone was sweeping the sector using deep scan logic signatures. Old war tech. The kind that could smell out cloaked ships and cloaked passengers. He looked at Natari. She'd already moved. To the edge of the room, hands pressed to the steel wall like she could feel the ripple through the alloy. They found something, she said softly. Yalin stared at the screen. They don't know what yet, but they're circling. How long? Maybe a few days? Maybe less. Natari backed away from the wall. Her glow had faded now, replaced by something dimmer, deeper. They're not just searching for me. They're hunting my absence. He turned to her. What does that mean? She hesitated, then sat down, fingers laced. There were others, versions, variants, each one made for a purpose, a mission, a species. I was the outlier, the error. When I left, they didn't send a search party. They erased the facility that made me. Yalin blinked. Erased? She nodded. Facility, staff, records. Gone. 1 malfunction is an embarrassment. 2 is a pattern. They won't risk another pattern. He swallowed. So if they find you, delete me. Quietly. Permanently. Yalin stood, his hands curled into fists. No. She looked up, expression unreadable. You'd stand in front of a fleet for me? He walked over, knelt in front of her. I'd build a wall they'd never get through. Long pause. Then, for the first time, she smiled. Not a mimic, not an echo. A real, fragile smile. You humans, she whispered. You break everything. You touch and still think you're fixing the world. We don't always fix things, he said. Sometimes we just refuse to let them break alone. And Tari touched her chest, over her second heart. That one's beating faster now. That's a good sign? I don't know, she said. But it happens when I look at you. Neither of them moved for a long time. The wind screamed outside the dome, rattling the solar array. Yalin dimmed the lights. They sat shoulder to shoulder, staring at the soft glow of the heater. Later, when she lay down, she reached out without looking and touched his hand. It wasn't a request. It was a choice. He took it gently, and in the silence that followed, they didn't speak of war or beacons or endings. Just breath, just warmth, just the beginning of something neither of them had words for yet. Something small, something alive, asterisk, the next day. Air felt heavier, not from the atmosphere it was still filtered, still controlled, but from something deeper, like the dome itself had become aware of what was happening inside it. Or maybe it was just Yalin. Maybe he was finally realizing that what started as a rescue was now something far more dangerous and far more personal. He woke up to silence again. Natari was already standing at the window, staring out at the flare-grass fields as they rippled under the morning cycle. She wore one of his shirts against leaves rolled. Collar loose, her silver-white hair now tied back with a strip of braided thermal cord. Her skin glowed faintly where the light hit it. She looked peaceful until she said, "They're closer now." Yalin sat up, instantly alert. You felt them again? She nodded slowly. Not a signal, a presence. It's like static under the skin, old coating. He stood pulling on his boots. How far? Close enough to map the dome's structure? They'll find the weak points first. He rubbed his face. Any chance they think you're dead? No, she said quietly. They wouldn't come at all if they thought that. Elaine walked over to the console, ran a diagnostic on the external scan grid. Something was jamming long-range comms. Probably a surveillance drone in orbit. He didn't have proof, but the grid was responding like it had been blinded on purpose. Do they know you're here? He asked. No, she said. But they suspect I'm somewhere. He looked at her. Then we make it impossible for them to guess where. Natari blinked. You plan to hide me again? No, Yolan said. I plan to protect you. There's a difference. She turned to him.
Ow.
They will not come loudly. There won't be ships in the sky.
Ow.
No boots in the dirt. They'll just erase my coordinates from the map, from the systems, from memory. He stepped forward, jaw tight. Then we make new coordinates, ones they don't control. She stared at him for a long time, something flickering in her eyes. Not fear, not hope, something between. Then she said, there's something I haven't told you. He folded his arms. Okay, my body wasn't just made to survive. It was made to change. My systems aren't fixed like yours. They rewrite themselves, adapt to whatever biological pattern I bond with. He frowned. Bond with? You mean like imprinting? Not instinct, she said. Choice, conscious connection. If I stay close to someone long enough, touch them. Share emotion, my internal systems begin to calibrate toward their pattern. Yalon stared. Are you saying you're changing into ... a hybrid? She nodded, slowly, but yes, he blinked. That's why your temperature shifted. Why food works now. Why you feel more human, she finished. Yes. If you were with someone else, my pattern would have changed in another direction. Yalon didn't speak for a while. Then he asked, voice quiet, why me? She stepped closer. Because you didn't ask me to change. Without trying to own me. That silenced him. She reached out, touched his chest just above his heart. Her hand was cool at first, then warmed in his skin's heat. Her fingers trembled just slightly. I'm not meant to do this, she whispered. We don't form bonds. We don't stay. We observe. We report. We vanish. He placed his hand over hers. You're not one of them anymore. No, she said, I'm not. That night, the sky over Viren 3 flared orange. An electrical storm rolled through. The upper atmosphere, violent, unpredictable. But this one was timed too perfectly to be natural. The flare-grass fields hissed and shimmered like they'd been lit from below. Yalon watched the readings spike on his terminal in bursts, data static, ion surges, and embedded in the data, single-coded pulse, linguistic signature, pre-war Earth code, military-directed, text, asset located, prepare for reclaim. His blood turned cold. He slammed the terminal shut and ran into the next room. Antari was already there. Fully dressed, holding a metal rod from the greenhouse Tuza staff, more than a weapon, but in her hands, it looked like both. I felt it, she said. They've seen through the dome's signal field. Then we go now, Yalon said. To where? Down below, she frowned. There's nothing below. There is, he said. A collapsed transport. Tunnel from the first colony phase. Covered after the terracore cracked. No one's used it in years. She narrowed her eyes. Why haven't you mentioned it before? He grabbed a power cell and a lantern, because I promised myself I'd never go back down there. I don't have a choice. Tari watched him for a beat longer, then nodded. Together. They descended through the back of the dome, past the broken storage units. Through a hatch hidden behind the old water reserve tank, the ladder creaked. Dust fell in sheets. Below them, the dark yawned, open like a forgotten throat. Antari moved like a shadow. Yolan followed with the light, trying not to imagine what might already be tracking them from above. At the bottom of the tunnel, in the damp, hollow air, she whispered, "You're scared." He glanced at her. "Yeah, but you're still going." He smirked, tired. "That's kind of my thing." Terra touched the wallowed markings hidden beneath layers of soot and time. Her glow brightened. "What is it?" he asked. She looked at him, eyes shining. "This place remembers things." He cocked an eyebrow. "What kind of things?" She smiled slightly. "Buried ones." They moved deeper into the dark, and overhead, beyond the dome, something unseen pierced the clouds and hovered in silence, its lights dim, its signal cold, its purpose clear. She was never meant to love. He was never meant to matter, but together. They were becoming a threat, a new pattern, and someone out there was very afraid of what came next. The tunnel smelled like rust and memory. Yolan hadn't been down here in over 6 years. Not since the TerraCore failure had collapsed half the transport line. Official reports said it was sealed and unsafe, unstable, no longer viable. That made it perfect. He helped Atari over the low piping and down the jagged slope into what used to be a maintenance chamber. The power grid was long dead, but her glow lit the walls in faint blue. Glyphs traced across the surface, old structural scans, emergency markings, human-made, dusted over like forgotten bones. They made a small camp in the dry corner. No fire, no signal. Just shared breath and the knowledge that above them, someone was getting closer. Yolan checked the scanner again, still scrambled. He looked at Natari, who sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, breathing slow and deep, like someone tuning into something invisible. "What do you hear?" he asked. "Not hear," she said. "Feel and..." She opened her eyes. One ship, not large, not military class, but advanced. He nodded. "Scouting, retrieval," she said. Jalen looked at her carefully. "You think they'll try to talk first?" And Tari didn't answer. That told him everything. Later, as they sat in silence, she asked, "Do you know what makes human biology so... dangerous?" He looked up, caught off guard by the question. "No, I was hoping you'd tell me." She touched her own chest above where one heart pulsed. Faint, but steady. "You adapt. Rapidly, not just physically, but emotionally. You form attachments in hours. You risk yourselves for strangers. You bond over pain. You create meaning where there was none. Some people call that irrational." She smiled. "So do the ones who fear it." He laughed softly. "And you. I was made to be efficient, empty. I was never supposed to feel attachment. It was a flaw in my botcha developmental overreach, they called it. I think..." She hesitated. "What?" he asked gently. "I think maybe they were afraid I'd see humans and want what they had." She turned to him then fully, "And I do." As the moment stretched, Jalen reached out slowly and touched her hand. This time her skin wasn't cold. She leaned into it. "I don't know what we are," he said, "but I know I'm not giving it up." The silence held between them. Then the signal hit. Sharp, loud, pure tone. Not through the radio, not through any machine, but directly into the walls, into the earth, into their bodies. Yolan gasped, clutching his temple. Natari arched her back with a sound halfway between a cry and a code. The light around her pulsed. Hard like a strobe underwater. "It's them," she gasped. "They've locked on." Yolan pulled her close. How do we stop it?" "You don't," she said, trembling. "They're not scanning. They're summoning." He held her. Tighter above them, something landed on the surface of the dome with a sound like steel dragging over bone. The whole tunnel shuddered. Dust rained down in sheets. The scanner in Jalen's hand blinked out dead. Then, silence again. And Tari stood shakily, her body still glowing, but differently now. Not soft, not gentle. It had sharp edges, like a warning. She wasn't just adapting, she was activating. "What's happening to you?" Yolan asked, standing beside her. "They triggered my protocol," she said. "But it's not responding the way they expect. It's bending. Because of you." Yolan blinked. Me, our bond, she said. You've changed my sequence. Your biology's become the dominant model. I'm not just syncing, I'm evolving. You make that sound like a good thing? She smiled faintly. It is, if I survive it. Another tremor rocked the chamber. They both turned toward the echoing sound of a distant door. Opening somewhere above, then descending footsteps, soft, deliberate. Jalen reached for the makeshift metal staff. Natari placed a hand on his arm. No. She said, let me go first. Why? Because this time, I want them to see what they tried to throw away. The thing that entered wasn't quite human, not fully. It was tall, lean, draped in dark alloy armor, laced with blinking blue circuits. No helmet. Its face was smooth, emotionless, skin too perfect. Eyes silver and cold. It looked at Natari, then at Yellen, then back. You survived, it said, voice like glass cracking. Natari stepped forward. Yes, the figure didn't move. You weren't supposed to. Neither were a lot of things that matter now, she said. The figure tilted its head. You bonded, yes. With that, it gestured at Yellen like he was furniture. She smiled with him. The figure's eyes dimmed. Then you are compromised. I'm more than I was. That's not a compromise. That's growth. The figure raised one hand, and from its palm a small orb emerged. Glowing hot and pulsing with a frequency Yolan could feel in his spine. Natari of Sequence 9. Return to base or be neutralized. Natari's glow surged, brighter than ever. Her body was humming, her voice lower now, charged. No. The orb pulsed once, then exploded. Yalan flinched, throwing his arm around her. But the shockwave never reached them. Instead, the energy fold, traverse pulled inward. The air around, Dar shimmered. She wasn't absorbing the blast. She was undoing it. Her body hummed with power now. But not in anger. It was balance. Light and breath and will fused into something no program could predict. The figure took a step back. What are you? I'm a mistake, she said. But not yours anymore. And then she looked at Jelaine and said, I'm ready. What? He asked, breathless. She stepped to him, placed a glowing hand over his heart, to become something new. And Yalan understood. She wasn't just resisting her makers. She was choosing her future with him. The figure retreated slowly, wordless, as if uncertain whether it had failed, or just witnessed something it couldn't calculate. Back in the dark of the transport tunnel, two figures stood in silence. One human, one something else. Both holding hands, both changing, and above them, storm raged. But it would pass. Asterisk, they didn't speak for a long time after the envoy left. It had simply turned and walked back into the dark, like it had never really been there. The metal steps faded into silence, and the orb's remains, the glowing weapon meant to erase her, had collapsed into dust. Dead nanites neutralized. The light had left them as if it had chosen to stay with her instead. Jalen sat beside Nadi, still catching his breath. His pulse thudded in his throat like a second heartbeat. Echoing hers. You really weren't supposed to survive, he whispered. No, she said softly, but you weren't supposed to matter. He looked at her. And yet here we are. She nodded, eyes locked on the tunnel ceiling, where thin roots dangled down from the earth, above roots of the flare grass pushing through cracks in the colony floor. Glowing faintly. Not red, not orange-blue. The color of her glow. You changed. The soil, Yalan said quietly. I didn't do it alone, she replied. This place listens. It's been listening since I landed. The soil isn't dead. It's waiting. It needed something to bond with. He looked down at her hand in his. Just like you. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. When they returned to the surface, it was just before dawn. The storm had passed. The sky was unusually clear, even beautiful waves of violet stars stretching across the black, like ancient rivers frozen in time. The flare grass fields shimmered in stillness, but something was different now. The ground had healed, where once it was scarred and synthetic. Patches now pulsed with soft, natural glow. blades grew taller, denser. The energy readings on Jalen's wrist pad spiked again, but this time nothing shorted out. Nothing broke. The field didn't reject the signal. It absorbed it, embraced it. "We can't go back to how things were," Natari said. "No," Yalan agreed. "But we can go forward." Colony sent a drone the next morning. It hovered outside the dome, flashing a request for biometric confirmation. Yalan ignored it. The drone waited 15 minutes, then left. When he checked the public colony feed manually, offline he saw a quiet update buried under operational logs. Subject asset status. Neutralized by absence. Sector declassified. Monitoring ended. "They erased you," he told her that night. "I know," she said. "That means I'm free. But we're also alone." She turned to him, expression unreadable. "Would you rather be monitored?" He thought about it. "No," he said. "I'd rather be together." A week passed, then another. They rebuilt. Part of the lower dome turned the old greenhouse into a new kind of habitat, one designed for something neither of them could name, but both of them recognized. Not a hideout, not a prison, a home. The flare grass continued to grow faster, thicker, deeper roots. The soil began to change color, rich with life. Yalan started logging the changes, and for the first time in years, he submitted real reports to the Terraform Council, but this time, under his name only. No one ever asked who else lived there. No one ever came. One night, as they lay side by side under the sky-viewed dome, Antari shifted and said, "I think something's changing inside me." Yalan blinked. "You okay?" She nodded, "Better than okay. I feel whole, but different. Not just emotionally, physically." "Sat up, show me." She took his hand and placed it over her belly. He felt it immediately warmth. Movement, life, his throat caught. "Are you? I don't know what to call it," she whispered. "Yes." Yalan didn't speak. Didn't need to. His hand stayed there, fingers closed over his. Her glow was softer now, gentler, like a heartbeat under skin. They lay there as the flare grass fields shimmered gold and blue under the artificial moon. Not two survivors, not a man and an alien, but something new, Signal neither side could control, a future no one designed, a family no one expected. Months passed, then seasons. No warships came. No probes. No more coded threats. The universe, it seemed, had simply moved on. But deep in the Terradome on Viren 3, one entry remained in Jalen's private log. Subject Natari status. Alive, bonded, evolving. New growth detected. Hybrid seed line confirmed. Notes: she wasn't meant to survive, wasn't meant to matter, but together, we planted something they couldn't erase. And in the quiet dawn of the news cycle, as small fingers grasped his calloused thumb for the first time, Yalan whispered to the life in his arms, "You are the proof that we were never the mistake." Outside, the flare grass bloomed. Inside, a legacy began. Not by design, but by choice. The story didn't end. It simply took root. Asterisk.